Hello friends, here we are back again in my kitchen, and tonight we're going to take a look at making chicken cutlets because they're pretty easy to make, but it's going to take just a little bit of work. The great thing about them is pounded thin, they don't take long to cook, and you could do lots of things with them when you make your different pan sauces. So tonight we're going to work with some real simple ingredients, of course, butter. And then to deglaze the pan and to make the sauce, I picked out a rosé. I think my friend Bernie is going to love this recipe. And then just to give it a little sweetness, a little something added to it, I have here some perfectly pear jam. And this has some ginger in it, so the combination is going to flavor it nice, give it a little teeny bit of heat. But if you don't like pear, and maybe you're one of those people that at a conference or something, when we used to go to conferences, you'd see these little jars of jelly. These are perfect for adding to your chicken pan sauce. You might find one that is, a little bit strawberry, or I would never use grape. Maybe an orange marmalade, that would work well. If you don't like this, a rosé, you could use something heavier like a port wine. And then you're going to add some herbs to it. Reduce it all down. It's really quite simple. The trick, though, is when you're buying fresh, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Because look at this. I mean, that's just way too thick to cook and to have it taste like anything without it being dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to do two things to it. One, if it's not too thick, you can simply just pound it. But something like this thick, you could butterfly it open or actually make two pieces into it. So I got my boning knife. I like this just because it's sharp. You could use your other knives, not a serrated knife though, but use a very sharp knife because more accidents happen with dull knives than with sharp knives. So I'm just going to put it here on my cutting board that I have lined with some plastic wrap. And I'm going to move you in just a little closer so you can see this. So let me flip this around. I'm starting at the thickest edge, and I'm just going to put the knife in there. I mean, you can see this knife just glides right through that. I'm going to open up this chicken breast. Sometimes you get all the way through. Sometimes at the end it gets thin enough that you don't have to try to slice through that, and that's what's happening here. So I'm just going to take off this piece. You can see much thinner, but even this piece, it's big. That's probably about 3/4 of an inch thick. So I have another piece of plastic wrap. I have my rolling pin, and we're going to just pound this thin. Now you can buy, a meat, a meat flattener type of ring thing that you pound with. I hate gadgets that only do one thing. I like multi-purpose gadgets. So this rolling pin that I use for cookies, helps me to pound this. If you've had a bad day at work, helps you get some of that aggression out. And this is the same type of technique you would use if you were pounding a pork chop thin or part of a pork loin. And that's getting pounded to about maybe a 1/2 inch or so. Let's open this up, take a look, and look at that. I mean, it grew by a lot, but this is going to cook really quickly. So I'm going to finish this. I did take out 4 chicken breasts, and let me pound the rest, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll take a look at cooking them, frying them, sauteing them in the skillet. See you in a bit. Okay, all the chicken breasts are pounded nice and thinly, and I've got my big skillet here heating up. And the way I always test is I always just put a little water in there, and when the water's gone, then I know it's pretty warm. So I'm going to add 2.5 exactly tablespoons of olive oil, and of course a little butter. I'm putting in maybe about a tablespoon. Give that a little swirl. And now I'm going to bring you a little bit closer so you can look into the skillet. See that butter is doing its job. Heat is medium, medium high. Don't want it too hot. We can always adjust that, of course. And on the chicken, I've sprinkled it with just a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. I don't cook with a lot of salt. I love salt, but I shouldn't love salt. So I tend to cook lightly with it and then just let people at the table add it as they need it. So we have our nice piece of chicken. And we don't want to crowd the pan because we want this to actually cook with a hot temperature. We don't want it to steam. We want it to get some color. So we're going to let that cook, and you're going to be able to see, and you probably can see this already, is, you know, right out the edge, you can see it's starting to turn opaque. So that's a sign, you know, it's cooking. We'll watch that. We'll let it get a little color, and then we will flip it over, do the other side. So here's some, let me move this around a bit. So we'll let that cook for a bit. But just some nice little combinations that you can do. Instead of just using wine and butter, you could use some chicken stock that you'll reduce in the pan. You can add like half chicken stock, half wine. You could do this with orange juice if you want an orange flavored chicken. You could do it even with some balsamic vinegar. For that heavier wine, you could do it with port. And then with port, you know, think of how thick and syrupy that tastes. So you could add dried fruit to that, like dried cherries or dried cranberries. With that, you could also add in like a raspberry jam. I don't like raspberries. It's just one of my very, very few character flaws. No raspberries, and I've never had a cup of coffee. Just naturally cheery. Other ways you could do this, lemon and caper. You're used to seeing that in restaurants. And one of my favorites, though, is a mustard cream, which you're going to use chicken stock, a little bit of Dijon mustard. So usually we're going to use like about a half a cup to a cup of liquid. Let that reduce. 2 tablespoons of the mustard, and of course 2 tablespoons of whipping cream. So let's take a close look again at the chicken. And again, we're going to watch these because, you know, sometimes our slicing skills aren't exact. So some pieces, you know, are going to get cooked. But we can see that's getting a nice color on there. Turn the other one around. I'm going to just rotate these because every once in a while you have one of those pans where one side cooks hotter than the other. I suppose on some cooking shows they figured out which is the pan that has the same temperature all around. This is a good pan though. Wasn't too expensive, and it does the job. Now, with the chicken breast, I certainly couldn't fit all 8 pieces into here. So I have a pan on the side that once these are done, I'm going to transfer them into that. And then you can take that and put it into an oven that maybe is at, you know, 175 degrees just to keep it warm. Or in my case, I'm roasting some fingerling potatoes tonight to have with the chicken. So that oven's at 425 degrees. I won't want to put the chicken breast in there to stay warm because they're not going to stay warm. They're going to overcook. So what I'll probably do is just over here on the vent, hot air coming out through there. I'll put them into the pan, cover the pan. That'll keep them warm. And as we're cooking, you can use your thermometer to check, what the temperature is. But you've heard all that whole, how to do it with your hand. So if we look at our hand and you spread your fingers across, and here now it's pretty, there's no give there. So that's, well done. You start, it gets squishier. So, if you like your steak medium rare like I do, it's a little springy, medium, not as much. Here you cremated your steak and I'm not going to eat it. So the same thing as I'm touching the chicken, I can feel this larger, thicker part here is still squishy. This one actually feels pretty done. Ooh, look at that color. I'm going to give that a turn, get that a nice color on there. Grab my pan. And of course the pan could be sitting there getting warmed up so that, you're not putting it into a cold pan. That's a great thing when you're making dinners for friends and it's cold outside. Never serve them food on a cold plate in the winter. So I tend to, if I'm baking something in the oven, roasting something in the oven, then I just put it into the plates on top of the stove so they get warm. Just make sure you use pot holders because you don't want to burn yourself. Okay, these are done. Lovely color. So I'm going to finish cooking these chicken breasts and then I'll come back to you and we'll make the sauce. Okay, we are back. And look at this chicken. That is a perfectly colored piece of chicken. And look how huge that is. And that's just half of the breast. That big one that I started with at the very beginning. So now we have all this lovely fond in the bottom, all these little bits of chicken and stuff like that. So we're going to deglaze it with a little wine. Scrape up those little bits. So as that's doing its magic, in the pan over here as the chicken was resting, it gave off some juices. So I'm going to add those juices into here because that is more flavor that we want to add. Let's get a good grip on this pan. Fold the chicken in. Cover them up again. And let's crank this heat up a bit. Because we have a bit of wine in there. That was probably about 3/4 to a cup. I want to take the pear ginger. That's been sitting near the stove, so that pretty much slid right out of the jar. And let's let that do its thing. And of course you could just keep letting this reduce, add a little more wine. In the end we're going to finish it with a little butter. It all depends on how much sauce you like on your chicken. You don't want it swimming in it, but you want to be able to know it's there. Still needs a way to go. It's not coating the spoon. We don't want it to be a syrup, we want it to be a sauce. So we just have to exercise a little patience. And you can sort of tell by, as we're parting the Red Sea here, how quickly does it take to refill. Yeah, that's getting to a nice consistency. Gonna let that go for a bit. And of course, if it gets too thick, add a little more wine. Or, you know, if you don't even want to use wine, you could always be using chicken stock for this. That's looking really good. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a nice generous tablespoon of butter to that. Give that a little swirl. I'm going to put in some parsley just to cook down and impart a little bit of flavor there. Look at that, that looks great. But of course now, I think I will add just a bit more wine. That was maybe another quarter cup or so. Thin that out just a little bit. This chicken is done. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to take my chicken and coat that. Those are beautiful pieces of chicken. There's that monster piece. Put these all in here. Take the extra sauces that are still in this pan. Turn this off. And dinner is just about ready. Going to take the roasted fingerling potatoes out of the oven. I have some asparagus in there roasting as well. So dinner set. We'll see you next time. And one of the things we might look at next time is this lovely gassy root vegetable known as a rutabaga. Or maybe you know it as a swede. That's another name for it. Really fibrous, but really high in lots of vitamins. Usually comes coated in a little wax, so we have to take care of that. But until next time, enjoy your food. Bye.